Hello everyone, I am the Boring Historian and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. You wake with a jolt. The ground beneath you is hard, uneven, and damp. Your nostrils fill with unfamiliar scents, earthy, musky, primal. Opening your eyes, you see not the comfortable ceiling of your bedroom, but a canopy of ancient trees stretching toward a pristine sky. You've been transported somehow to the Stone Age, approximately 15,000 years ago, deep in the Paleolithic period. A surge of adrenaline courses through your veins. Is this a dream? A simulation? Some cruel experiment? The throbbing pain in your bare feet as you stand, cut on sharp stones you didn't see, confirms this is horrifyingly real. Blood wells between your toes. Your first injury, mere seconds into your Stone Age experience. You're completely alone. No smartphone, no water bottle, no energy bars tucked into your pockets, no synthetic clothing designed to wick away moisture and regulate body temperature. Just you, a modern human with all your contemporary knowledge, but none of your technological crutches, dropped into humanity's ancient past. The question isn't whether you'll survive this harsh prehistoric world. The question is, will you even last until sundown? The first thing that strikes you isn't the absence of modern conveniences, but the overwhelming sensory experience of the unfiltered Stone Age world. The air feels different in your lungs, richer in oxygen than what you're accustomed to, almost intoxicating. Your ears, attuned to the constant background hum of electrical devices and distant traffic, are bombarded by a cacophony of natural sounds. The rustling of leaves, the calls of unfamiliar birds, the buzzing of insects, and the distant, hair-raising howls of predators you can't identify. The smells are what truly disorient you. Modern humans live in a deodorized world where unpleasant scents are masked, eliminated, or simply kept at a distance. Here the olfactory assault is relentless. The earthy aroma of soil and vegetation, the musty scent of fungi, the occasional waft of animal dung, and something else, something primal that triggers deep, instinctual responses in your brain. Your body is telling you, this is real, this is wild, and you are unprepared. Your eyes struggle to adjust to a world without the straight lines and consistent lighting of modernity. The dappled sunlight through the trees creates a disorienting pattern of light and shadow. Distances are harder to judge. Colors seem both more vibrant and more subtle than you're used to seeing on screens. Everything feels simultaneously sharper and more overwhelming. Within minutes, your body begins to register the shock of displacement. Your heart pounds against your ribcage, pumping blood frantically as your fight or flight response engages. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Cortisol floods your system. This stress response, so useful for short-term threats in the modern world, will quickly become your enemy here, where sustained alertness is necessary for survival. You're likely dehydrated already. Modern humans are chronically underhydrated, relying on prompted drinking rather than responding to natural thirst. In the Paleolithic, without clean water at the turn of a tap, this baseline dehydration becomes immediately problematic. Your stomach growls. When was your last meal? 6 hours ago? 12. In your world, hunger was an inconvenience easily remedied. Here it's the beginning of a potentially fatal countdown. Your modern microbiome, the bacteria that inhabit your gut, are ill-equipped for Stone Age nutrition. The processed foods, antibiotics, and sanitized environment of contemporary life have left you with a depleted and specialized internal ecosystem that will rebel violently against uncooked foods, untreated water, and exposure to ancient microbes. As reality sets in, panic begins to build. This isn't a weekend camping trip. There are no park rangers to call if things go wrong. No emergency services. No map with a convenient "you are here" marker. No GPS. No trail back to civilization. You are utterly, completely alone. A time traveler without a return ticket. Before you've had time to fully process your situation, the elements begin their assault. Modern humans live in climate-controlled environments, moving from heated homes to air-conditioned vehicles to regulated workplaces. Our bodies have forgotten how to effectively thermoregulate in extreme conditions. If you've arrived in winter, hypothermia will begin setting in within hours. Without proper clothing, shelter, or fire, your core temperature will drop below 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 degrees Celsius, causing confusion, fatigue, and eventually unconsciousness and death. In summer, hyperthermia presents the opposite threat. Without access to shade, water, or appropriate clothing, your body will overheat, leading to heat exhaustion and potentially fatal heat stroke. Rain in the Stone Age isn't a minor inconvenience. It's a serious survival threat. Getting wet dramatically accelerates heat loss, potentially dropping your core temperature to dangerous levels even in moderate weather. Without waterproof shelter or quick-drying synthetic clothing, a single rainstorm could prove fatal. Wind chill compounds these dangers. Standing in an open area during a strong wind can lower your effective temperature by 10 to 20 degrees, 6 to 11 degrees Celsius. The wind chill factor, so casually mentioned in modern weather reports, becomes a matter of life and death. Your instinct might be to immediately begin constructing shelter, but this seemingly simple task reveals your modern helplessness. Where do you start? Which materials will work? How do you fasten them together without rope, nails, or tools? Paleolithic humans had generations of knowledge passed down about local materials and effective shelter designs. They knew which branches would bend without breaking, which leaves would shed water, which fibers could be twisted into cordage, and which locations offered protection from the elements without exposing them to other dangers. You have none of this knowledge. Your attempts at shelter construction will likely result in an unstable structure that collapses in the first strong wind or heavy rain. Even if you manage to build something that stands, you'll likely overlook crucial factors. Proper ventilation to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning if you build a fire inside. Adequate insulation from the ground to prevent conductive heat loss. Orientation to prevailing winds. Drainage to prevent flooding. Recent archaeological discoveries at Kosanivka, Ukraine, suggest that even 5,600 years ago, Stone Age people had sophisticated knowledge of building construction, with evidence of houses arranged in planned settlements. The bones found at this site indicate that house fires were a real danger. One victim appears to have died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Without their accumulated knowledge, your makeshift shelter might become your tomb. As night approaches and temperatures drop, fire becomes essential. But starting a fire without matches, lighters, or even proper tools is nearly impossible for someone with no practice. The bow drill method, twirling a stick against a wooden board using a bow, requires specific materials, precise technique, and considerable physical stamina. Flint knapping to create sparks demands skills honed over years. Even finding appropriate tinder in damp conditions requires knowledge you simply don't have. Paleolithic humans carried fire with them from camp to camp whenever possible, understanding its precious value. They had specialized knowledge about which materials made the best long-burning embers, which woods created hot cooking fires versus good smoking fires for preserving meat. They understood how to bank coals overnight to preserve them for morning. You'll spend hours desperately trying to create a spark, exhausting yourself physically and mentally. As darkness falls and temperatures drop, the absence of fire means more than discomfort. It means vulnerability to predators. inability to cook food, no way to purify water, and potentially lethal exposure to the cold. The bitter irony? You probably understand the physics of fire making better than any Stone Age human ever did. But your theoretical knowledge is worthless without practical skills and experience. Modern humans have forgotten what it means to be prey. For most of human history, we occupied a middle position in the food chain, both predator and prey. In the Stone Age, this reality shaped every aspect of human behavior. Where to sleep, when to move, how to build shelter. The Paleolithic world contained predators far more numerous and formidable than those that exist today. Cave lions were significantly larger than modern African lions. Cave bears stood 11 feet tall on their hind legs and weighed up to 2,200 pounds. Dire wolves hunted in packs. Short-faced bears in North America were the largest mammalian carnivores on land, capable of running down horses over short distances. These weren't distant threats glimpsed occasionally. They were ever-present dangers that determined the rhythm of human life. Archaeological evidence from sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey reveals how central these animals were to human consciousness, appearing in artwork and probably in spiritual beliefs. Stone Age humans understood the behavior patterns of these predators intimately. They knew when cave lions were most likely to hunt, which watering holes were favored by cave hyenas, and how to interpret the distant howls of wolf packs. They could read subtle environmental cues that signaled predator activity. Birds suddenly taking flight, prey animals freezing in place, specific scents on the wind. You have none of these skills. In the landscape of fear, you are blind. As darkness falls on your first day, a primal fear grips you. Modern humans experience true darkness rarely, if ever. Light pollution means that even rural areas have some ambient light. The Stone Age night was absolute, a darkness so complete that the hand held before your face would be invisible. This darkness belonged to the predators. Many had excellent night vision, acute hearing, and an extraordinary sense of smell. Some hunted primarily at night when their advantages over humans were greatest. Without fire, you are maximally vulnerable. Your poor night vision renders you effectively blind. Your underdeveloped sense of smell gives you no warning of approaching predators. Your hearing, while better than your other senses, isn't trained to distinguish the subtle sounds of a stalking predator from the background noises of the night. Sleep becomes impossible. Every snapping twig, every rustle of leaves sends a jolt of adrenaline through your system. You try to remain vigilant, but exhaustion eventually overcomes you. In this twilight state between wakefulness and sleep, you are at your most vulnerable, neither alert enough to detect danger, nor rested enough to respond effectively. While large predators pose an obvious threat, the smaller unseen hunters might kill you first. Insects and arachnids, mosquitoes, ticks, spiders, scorpions, were responsible for countless deaths in the Paleolithic through both direct envenomation and disease transmission. Without insect repellent, protective clothing, or sealed shelter, you're exposed to a barrage of bites throughout the day and night. Malaria, transmitted by mosquitoes, has been present in human populations for over 100,000 years. Tick-borne diseases like relapsing fever have ancient origins. Spider and scorpion species that no longer exist might have venom your modern immune system has never encountered. Even bees and wasps pose a greater threat than in modern times. Without antihistamines or epinephrine injections, an allergic reaction that would be manageable today could be fatal in the Stone Age. The constant itching and pain from insect bites isn't merely an annoyance. It's a serious drain on your mental resources and physical energy, resources you desperately need for more immediate survival tasks. As night deepens and your fatigue increases, One realization becomes inescapable. You haven't survived your first day. You've merely postponed the inevitable. Modern depictions of hunter-gatherer life often suggest an abundance of easily obtained food. The reality was starkly different. Paleolithic humans spent most of their waking hours securing nutrition through knowledge-intensive activities that required years of training and practice. Your modern eyes scan the landscape and see nothing edible. The plants all around you might be rich sources of nutrition or deadly poison. You lack the knowledge to tell the difference. The roots that might sustain you remain hidden underground. The edible insects that could provide crucial protein disgust you culturally, though your hunger might eventually overcome this aversion. Recent archaeological findings from Malta indicate that Stone Age hunter-gatherers had sophisticated knowledge that enabled them to make challenging sea journeys of over 100 kilometers to reach new territories. This suggests they possessed complex navigational and survival skills developed over generations, skills that allowed them to find and exploit food resources in varied environments. You possess none of this crucial knowledge. Your body, accustomed to regular caloric intake, begins to panic as hours pass without food. Modern humans typically consume 1,800 to 3,000 calories daily, often without physical exertion that would justify such intake. In the Paleolithic, you would need every calorie for survival activities. Hunger isn't just discomfort, it's deteriorating cognitive function when you most need clear thinking. Your blood sugar drops, causing shakiness, difficulty concentrating, and impaired decision-making. After 24 hours without food, your body begins breaking down glycogen stores in your liver and muscles. After 48 hours, it starts converting fat to ketones for energy, a process your body isn't adapted to if you've maintained a carbohydrate-rich modern diet. The cruel paradox of starvation is that as you grow weaker, finding food requires increasingly more energy that you don't have. Each failed hunting or gathering attempt leaves you less capable of succeeding the next time. Desperate for protein, you might attempt hunting. This decision reveals another dimension of your modern helplessness. Without weapons, you cannot take down anything larger than small rodents, and even that would require setting traps, a skill you don't possess. Without years of practice reading animal signs, you'll rarely even see potential prey before they detect and avoid you. Stone Age hunters didn't just know how to make weapons. They understood the behavior patterns of their prey intimately. They could predict migration routes, identify feeding grounds, interpret tracks and scat, and recognize subtle signs of animal presence that would be invisible to your untrained eye. Even if you somehow managed to kill an animal, you would face the challenge of processing it without proper tools. Removing the hide without a sharp blade is nearly impossible. Breaking bones to access marrow requires specific techniques. Preserving meat in the absence of refrigeration demands knowledge of smoking, drying, or other preservation methods. Your modern sensibilities might also present a psychological barrier. Killing an animal with your bare hands and eating partially raw meat requires overcoming deeply ingrained cultural taboos, a mental shift that doesn't happen overnight. The hard truth emerges. Long before you master hunting, you will likely become prey yourself. Humans evolved as ultrasocial creatures. Our entire biology and psychology are designed for group living. Stone Age humans never lived alone. The very concept would have been incomprehensible to them. Bands typically consisted of 20 to 50 individuals, with larger gatherings occurring periodically. This social structure wasn't a cultural choice, but a survival necessity. Different individuals developed specialized knowledge and skills. Some excelled at tracking, others at identifying edible plants, others at making tools or constructing shelters. No single person possessed all the knowledge necessary for survival. Your isolation isn't merely emotional, it's a fundamental mismatch with your evolutionary design. Without others to share the cognitive and physical burden of survival, you're attempting to be something humans were never meant to be: a solitary survivor. The psychological impact of this isolation would be devastating. Modern studies on solitary confinement show significant cognitive deterioration within days. In the high-stress environment of the Paleolithic, this deterioration would be accelerated. You would experience heightened anxiety, paranoia, difficulty concentrating, and eventually hallucinations. Physical tasks become exponentially more difficult without cooperation. Setting up camp, gathering enough firewood, maintaining vigilance against predators, securing food. These activities were designed to be distributed across multiple individuals. Attempting them alone depletes your energy reserves rapidly and increases the likelihood of fatal mistakes. Beyond practical cooperation, Stone Age bands provided an invisible safety net that you lack entirely. If you fell ill, others would care for you. If you were injured, others would protect and feed you until you recovered. If you failed in a hunting attempt, others would share their food. This mutual aid wasn't altruism, it was reciprocal insurance. Today I share my food with you. Tomorrow, when I come back empty-handed, you share with me. This system created resilience against the unpredictability of Paleolithic life. Without this safety net, any minor setback could prove fatal. A sprained ankle that would mean a few days of rest in a band context might mean starvation for you. A fever that others would treat with gathered medicinal plants might progress to life-threatening levels without care. A failed food gathering expedition has no backup. You simply go hungry. The absence of others also means no warning systems. Stone Age bands posted lookouts, maintained awareness of their surroundings collectively, and passed information constantly about potential dangers or opportunities. Alone, your awareness is limited to what your senses can detect in the moment, a dangerous reduction in an environment filled with threats. Perhaps most critically, you've been cut off from the accumulated knowledge of generations that was transmitted orally in Paleolithic societies. Stone Age humans didn't need to individually discover which plants were edible, which were medicinal, and which were poisonous. This information was passed down, refined, and expanded over thousands of years. The same applied to toolmaking, shelter construction, weather prediction, animal behavior, and countless other survival skills. The oral tradition wasn't primitive. It was an extraordinarily sophisticated system for preserving and transmitting essential information across generations. Without access to this knowledge base, you're essentially starting from zero in an environment that demands expertise. Your modern education, focused on abstract concepts, symbolic manipulation, and specialized professional skills, offers almost no practical advantage in this context. The bitter irony, you might know more about the theoretical aspects of Stone Age life than any Paleolithic human ever did. You might understand the physics of fire making, the biology of plant toxins, the mechanics of stone tool production. But this abstract knowledge cannot save you without the practical skills that come from direct instruction and years of practice. If by some miracle you encountered Stone Age humans, you would face another insurmountable barrier: language. No modern linguistic tools could help you communicate with Paleolithic people. Their languages have left no trace. No Rosetta Stone exists to bridge the 15,000-year gap, and their conceptual frameworks would be fundamentally different from yours. The isolation of having no one to understand you or be understood by you would compound your physical vulnerability with psychological distress. Humans are wired for communication. our brains devote enormous resources to language processing and social cognition. Being unable to communicate creates a form of cognitive dissonance that further taxes your already strained mental resources. Even basic survival information couldn't be exchanged. You couldn't ask which plants are safe to eat, where to find water, or how to avoid local predators. You couldn't explain your situation or ask for help. The knowledge that might save your life would remain locked behind an impenetrable linguistic barrier. Even nonverbal communication would likely fail you. Modern gestures that seem intuitive to you might be meaningless, or worse, offensive to Stone Age humans. Their social cues, expressions, and body language would be equally opaque to you. This communication void would make integration into a band, your best hope for survival, extremely difficult. Stone Age groups were necessarily suspicious of outsiders, as territorial conflicts were common and resources limited. Without the ability to establish trust through communication, you would likely be perceived as a threat. The lack of written records would disorient you in subtler ways. Modern humans outsource memory to external media, books, computers, smartphones. We rarely need to remember information perfectly because we can always look it up. In the Paleolithic, all knowledge was stored in human memory, refined through storytelling, and reinforced through regular recitation and practice. Your modern brain, adapted to storing retrieval cues rather than the information itself, would struggle to build the rich, detailed mental archives necessary for survival. This difference extends to spatial navigation. Without maps, GPS, or even landmarks you recognize, your ability to build mental maps of your environment would be severely compromised. Getting lost, a temporary inconvenience in the modern world, would be potentially fatal in the Stone Age. As days passed, this communication void would transform from a practical problem into an existential one. The inability to share your experiences, fears, and hopes with another human being would erode your sense of self. In a very real way, we know who we are through our interactions with others. Without this mirror, your identity would begin to fragment. Stone Age bands had sophisticated social structures with established leadership, decision-making processes, and conflict resolution mechanisms. These weren't formalized in writing, but were nonetheless real and effective. Alone, you bear the full cognitive burden of every decision. Should you stay in one place or keep moving? Should you spend energy looking for better shelter or focus on finding food? Should you drink from that stagnant water or risk growing thirst? Each decision must be made without counsel, without shared wisdom, and with the knowledge that a single poor choice could be fatal. Decision fatigue sets in quickly. Each choice depletes your limited willpower and cognitive resources. Modern humans typically make thousands of decisions daily, but most are low stakes, and many are habitual. In the Paleolithic, every decision could mean life or death, and you have no habitual responses appropriate to this environment. The psychological toll of this constant decision-making under extreme pressure would be enormous. Self-doubt would plague you. Without others to validate your choices or offer alternatives, your confidence would erode rapidly, leading to decision paralysis at critical moments. Paleolithic societies practiced sophisticated division of labor. While not as specialized as modern economies, they recognized and utilized individual strengths and distributed tasks accordingly. Some individuals focused on hunting, others on gathering, others on childcare, others on tool production. This specialization allowed the group to accomplish more collectively than any individual could manage alone. It also created efficiencies through practice and skill development. Alone, you must be a generalist, hunter, gatherer, toolmaker, healer, and guard all at once. This forces you to operate far below the efficiency level of Stone Age humans in every domain. Your fire-starting attempts take hours rather than minutes. Your food gathering yields meager results compared to an experienced forager. Your makeshift weapons are crude approximations of the finely crafted tools Paleolithic hunters used. The cumulative effect is exhaustion without adequate return on your energy investment, a formula for rapid physical deterioration. When conflicts arise in modern society, we turn to established systems, laws, mediators, social norms to resolve them. Stone Age bands had their own conflict resolution mechanisms, typically involving group discussion, shared values, and sometimes ritualized confrontation. Alone, internal conflicts have no resolution path. Should you risk crossing that river to reach what might be better territory? Should you eat those berries that look similar to ones you recognize but aren't quite the same? Should you fashion a spear or focus on improving your shelter? These internal debates consume precious mental energy and often result in compromise solutions that satisfy neither need adequately. The lack of external perspective means you cannot break out of your own thought patterns, even when they lead you in circles. The result is a form of paralysis, not physical but psychological, that further reduces your already slim chances of survival. Modern humans are, by Paleolithic standards, remarkably weak. Studies comparing the bone density of ancient humans to contemporary populations show that Stone Age people had significantly stronger bones and larger muscle attachment sites, indicating greater overall strength. A Paleolithic adolescent would likely outperform a modern adult athlete in many measures of physical capability. This physical devolution is the result of our increasingly sedentary lifestyle, particularly over the last few centuries. While you might exercise regularly by modern standards, even the most dedicated fitness enthusiast engages in physical activity far less intense and varied than the daily routine of a Stone Age human. The consequences of this physical inadequacy become immediately apparent in the Paleolithic environment. Tasks that Stone Age humans performed routinely, climbing trees to gather food, carrying heavy loads over long distances, running to escape predators, would push your body to its breaking point. Without calluses built up over a lifetime, your hands bleed after a few hours of basic survival work. Without feet toughened by years of barefoot walking, stone bruises and cuts quickly make movement agonizing. Without the bone density to withstand impacts, fractures occur more easily. Without the cardiovascular endurance developed through constant movement, you're quickly winded by activities Stone Age people would consider trivial. Modern humans have a remarkably low pain tolerance compared to our ancestors. Regular exposure to analgesics, climate control, and physical comfort has reset our pain threshold to trigger at levels that would have been considered mild discomfort in the Paleolithic. In the Stone Age, pain was a constant companion. Minor injuries, insect bites, sunburn, muscle fatigue, these were background noise rather than focal concerns. Hunter-gatherers developed high pain tolerance out of necessity. They simply couldn't afford to stop activities essential for survival because of discomfort. Your lower pain threshold isn't a moral failing. It's a biological adaptation to your environment. But in the Paleolithic context, it's maladaptive. You'll find yourself distracted and debilitated by sensations that Stone Age humans would have ignored. This distraction in a high-risk environment increases your likelihood of making fatal mistakes. Modern sleep patterns bear little resemblance to those of our Paleolithic ancestors. Hunter-gatherers typically slept in shorter bursts, practiced segmented sleep with wakeful periods during the night, and often napped during the day. Their sleep was communal, with some individuals always remaining alert to watch for dangers. Your modern sleep expectations, 7 to 9 uninterrupted hours in complete darkness and silence, are impossible to meet in the Stone Age environment. Without shelter, artificial light to extend the day, or others to keep watch, your sleep will be fragmented, shallow, and constantly interrupted by environmental stimuli and anxiety. The cognitive effects of sleep deprivation compound rapidly. After 24 hours without adequate sleep, your cognitive performance decreases to levels equivalent to legal intoxication. Your reaction time slows, your decision-making deteriorates, your memory becomes unreliable, and your emotional regulation falters. In the high-stakes environment of the Paleolithic, where split-second decisions determine survival, this cognitive impairment is potentially fatal. A moment's hesitation when a predator appears, a poor judgment call about which path to take, an emotional outburst that wastes precious energy. Any of these could be your last mistake. Your body's circadian rhythms have been profoundly influenced by modern lighting, schedules, and social expectations. Artificial light has extended our active periods well beyond sunset, while alarm clocks cut short our natural sleep cycles. Suddenly plunged into a world governed solely by natural light and darkness, your body's internal clock would struggle to adjust. This misalignment affects not just sleep, but hormone production, digestion, temperature regulation, and cognitive function. During the adjustment period, which could last weeks, you would experience something akin to severe jet lag. Fatigue during daylight hours when activity is safest, alertness during dangerous night hours, digestive disruption, and mood instability would all undermine your already precarious survival efforts. The Paleolithic world was saturated with pathogens, for which your body has no defense. Modern humans benefit from generations of acquired immunity, vaccination, and public health measures that have eliminated or controlled many infectious diseases. Suddenly removed from this protective bubble, you would be extraordinarily vulnerable. Water sources teeming with bacteria, parasites, and viruses would cause severe gastrointestinal illness within days. Without treatment, dehydration from diarrhea and vomiting could be fatal within 72 hours. Giardia, Cryptosporidium, E. coli, and countless other waterborne pathogens await your first desperate drink. Airborne diseases circulated freely in Paleolithic populations. Without the partial immunity developed through childhood exposure, diseases that Stone Age humans weathered might overwhelm your immune system completely. Parasitic infections were ubiquitous. Intestinal worms, ticks, fleas, lice, and mites that carried their own diseases. Without regular grooming by others, a crucial social activity in primate groups, external parasites would multiply unchecked, causing sores, secondary infections, and disease transmission. Even if you avoided acute infections, chronic conditions would develop. Vitamin deficiencies from inconsistent nutrition would manifest as weakness, cognitive changes, and skin problems. Dental issues would arise without any hygiene practices, eventually causing debilitating pain and potentially life-threatening abscesses. Physical injury in the Paleolithic wasn't a discrete event, but the beginning of a potentially fatal cascade. A simple cut, without proper cleaning and protection, inevitably becomes infected. Without antibiotics, that infection spreads, causing increasing pain, swelling, and eventually systemic illness. What begins as a minor wound ends as sepsis and death. Broken bones, without setting and immobilization, heal improperly, if at all, leading to permanent disability. Sprains and strains, without rest and rehabilitation, lead to compensatory movement patterns that cause secondary injuries. Burns, without appropriate treatment, become infected and leave debilitating scars that restrict movement. The psychological impact of untreated pain cannot be overstated. Constant pain narrows attention, disrupts sleep, impairs decision-making, and eventually breaks the spirit. Modern humans are accustomed to pain relief being readily available. Its complete absence would be both physically and mentally devastating. Your modern body likely depends on the pharmaceutical industry in ways you take for granted. Beyond obvious medications for chronic conditions, consider the everyday remedies you use without thought. Antihistamines for allergies, NSAIDs for minor pain, antacids for indigestion, topical antibiotics for small wounds. In the Paleolithic, these remedies don't exist. A seasonal allergy that causes mild discomfort in your modern life becomes debilitating when your survival depends on acute awareness of your surroundings. A headache you would normally treat with aspirin persists for days, impairing your cognitive function when you most need clarity. A small infected wound throbs with pain that you cannot dull, consuming your attention and depleting your mental resources. Stone Age humans weren't without remedies. They had extensive knowledge of medicinal plants and physical treatments. But this knowledge was accumulated over generations and passed down through cultural transmission. Without access to this oral tradition, you would be forced to experiment blindly, risking poisoning or adverse reactions. Modern healthcare emphasizes prevention. Regular checkups, screening tests, early intervention for developing conditions. This system catches problems before they become life-threatening and manages chronic conditions before they cause disability. In the Paleolithic, there is no preventive care. Minor issues inevitably progress to major ones. A small ache in your tooth becomes an abscess. The occasional chest pain becomes a debilitating cardiac event. The mole changing shape becomes metastatic cancer. Your modern body, having relied on this preventive system, enters the Stone Age with countless small problems that would normally be monitored and managed. Without intervention, these issues accelerate and compound, creating a physical deterioration far more rapid than you could anticipate. The cruel reality emerges. Your body, the product of modern medicine, nutrition, and lifestyle, is fundamentally incompatible with Paleolithic existence. It isn't just that you lack skills. Your physical form itself is maladapted to the world you must now navigate. The psychological impact of sudden immersion in the Paleolithic world would be immediate and severe. Modern humans rarely experience true life-threatening situations. When they do, they often develop post-traumatic stress disorder, even with support systems in place. In the Stone Age, every day brings multiple traumatic experiences. Near misses with predators, the constant presence of hunger, the sight of injury and death, the omnipresent risk of violence. Without any psychological support, your mind would quickly become overwhelmed. The symptoms of this psychological trauma would undermine your survival efforts. Hypervigilance, while seemingly adaptive in a dangerous environment, leads to exhaustion and poor discrimination between actual and perceived threats. Intrusive thoughts and flashbacks disrupt concentration on essential tasks. Emotional numbing impairs decision-making. Avoidance behaviors might prevent you from taking necessary risks for survival. Modern humans derive meaning and purpose from complex social structures, cultural narratives, and long-term goals. Suddenly stripped of these frameworks, you would experience an existential crisis alongside your physical struggles. Why persist in the face of overwhelming odds? What meaning can be found in mere survival? Without the social validation that humans fundamentally require, your sense of self would begin to disintegrate. This crisis isn't merely philosophical, it has direct survival implications. Human beings can endure extraordinary physical hardship when they perceive purpose in their suffering. Without this perception, resilience fails much earlier. The will to live, perhaps your most essential survival tool, erodes rapidly in the absence of meaning. Modern society, for all its connectivity technology, has left many people experiencing chronic loneliness. Yet even the most isolated modern human has more social contact than you would experience in the Paleolithic without a band. The psychological effects of extreme isolation have been well documented in studies of solitary confinement, Antarctic winter over personnel, and solo long-distance sailors. These include hallucinations, paranoia, depression, cognitive deterioration, and identity disturbance. In the high-stress environment of the Stone Age, these psychological effects would manifest more quickly and severely. Your internal monologue would become your only companion, eventually fragmenting into different voices as your mind attempts to create the social interaction it fundamentally requires. This psychological deterioration would compromise your already limited survival skills. Paranoia makes you misinterpret environmental cues. Depression saps the energy needed for crucial tasks. Cognitive impairment leads to fatal errors in judgment. Your sense of self is largely defined by social roles, professional identity, and cultural context. Who are you when these structures no longer exist? This question isn't abstract. It strikes at the core of psychological stability. Modern humans rarely confront complete identity dissolution. Even in major life transitions, some elements of identity remain constant. In the Paleolithic, nothing of your former identity remains relevant or validated. This identity crisis manifests physically as well as psychologically. Your body, accustomed to its modern role and activities, must suddenly function in entirely different ways. This creates a profound disconnection between your self-concept and your physical reality. As this dissociation deepens, basic functioning becomes increasingly difficult. The cognitive dissonance of being simultaneously a modern human and a Stone Age survivor creates a psychological wound that widens with each passing day, eventually undermining the very executive functions necessary for survival decision-making. The final psychological blow is the realization that there is no rescue coming. No one is searching for you. No helicopter will appear on the horizon. No trail leads back to civilization. This absolute abandonment, once fully comprehended, breaks something fundamental in the modern psyche: the implicit trust that systems exist to save us when all else fails. Modern humans live with a constant awareness of time. Watches, clocks, calendars, and schedules structure our days into discrete units, creating a perpetual sense of urgency and deadline orientation. Time is a resource to be managed, optimized, and sometimes fought against. Paleolithic humans experienced time radically differently. Their temporal awareness was tied to natural cycles, day and night, lunar phases, seasons, animal migrations, plant growth. Time wasn't abstract or separate from these physical manifestations. The concept of being late would have been meaningless. Your modern time consciousness would be both useless and actively harmful in the Stone Age context. The constant internal pressure to accomplish tasks quickly rather than correctly increases the likelihood of fatal errors. The inability to simply be present in extended activities, like waiting motionless for prey or carefully examining plants for edibility, undermines essential survival skills. More subtly, your perception of time as linear and progressive creates expectations of improvement that the Paleolithic reality would constantly frustrate. Each day does not build systematically on the last towards some better future. It is simply another day of immediate survival challenges. Modern life rewards short-term thinking. We optimize for immediate returns, quick results, and instant gratification. Even our long-term planning rarely extends beyond a few years. Paleolithic survival required balancing immediate needs with truly long-term thinking. Seasonal preparation began months in advance. Knowledge was accumulated and refined over generations. Resource management considered multi-year cycles of abundance and scarcity. Your modern cognitive biases toward immediacy would lead you to make decisions optimized for the next few hours rather than the next few seasons. You might consume all available food rather than preserve some for harder times. You might choose the easiest rather than the most sustainable gathering sites. You might prioritize immediate comfort over preparation for coming challenges. These short-horizon decisions, while rational in modern contexts with stable resource access, become fatal errors in the Paleolithic environment, where resources fluctuate dramatically and buffers against scarcity are essential. Without written records or standardized time measurement, your ability to track days, predict seasonal changes, and prepare for environmental shifts would be severely impaired. Stone Age humans had sophisticated calendrical knowledge. They could read subtle environmental cues that signaled coming changes in weather, animal behavior, and plant growth. You would struggle to identify these signals. Is that bird migration a sign of approaching winter or simply a local movement? Does that plant's flowering indicate the beginning of spring or just a temporary warm spell? Without this predictive capability, you'd constantly be caught unprepared for environmental changes. Paleolithic people developed intricate mental calendars based on celestial observations, seasonal plant and animal cycles, and weather patterns. This knowledge allowed them to anticipate migrations, prepare for seasonal food scarcities, and position themselves optimally for hunting or gathering opportunities. Your lack of this temporal framework would make long-term survival virtually impossible, even if you somehow managed to meet your immediate needs. Modern humans have outsourced most physical skills to technology. We don't need to know how to start fires because we have lighters and stoves. We don't need to know how to craft tools because we can buy them. We don't need to know how to track animals because meat comes packaged in stores. This dependence creates a profound vulnerability when that technology is suddenly absent. The average modern human cannot create from raw materials any of the items they use daily. The knowledge hasn't just been forgotten, it was never acquired in the first place. Your theoretical understanding of how Stone Age tools worked would offer little practical advantage. Knowing that a bow drill can create fire doesn't mean you can successfully use one. Understanding the principles of flint knapping doesn't translate to the ability to create a usable cutting edge. The gap between knowing about and knowing how is the difference between life and death in the Paleolithic. Stone Age humans possessed intimate knowledge of materials that modern humans have largely forgotten. They understood which stones fracture in predictable ways for tool making, which plants yield strong fibers for cordage, which tree resins serve as adhesives, which clays maintain shape when dried. This material knowledge was extraordinarily detailed and specific to local environments. A stone tool technique that worked perfectly with one type of rock might be completely ineffective with another that looks similar to your untrained eye. A plant fiber that makes excellent cordage in summer might be too brittle in winter. Without this knowledge, your attempts at creating tools would be frustratingly ineffective. The knife you fashion crumbles on first use. The container you weave leaks. The shelter you build collapses in the rain. Each failure consumes precious time and energy you cannot afford to waste. Tool use in the Paleolithic required not just knowledge but physical capabilities that develop only through years of practice. The precise motor control needed for flint knapping, the specific grip strength required for using primitive drilling tools, the exact body mechanics for throwing a spear accurately. These are physical adaptations that cannot be developed overnight. Your modern body, adapted to keyboards and touchscreens, lacks these specialized capabilities. Your hands blister and cramp. Your aim fails. Your strikes lack the necessary precision and power. The tools that Paleolithic humans created with apparent ease remain beyond your capabilities, despite your best efforts. This physical inadequacy creates a vicious cycle. Without proper tools, survival tasks become more difficult and dangerous. Without the proper tools to create better tools, you remain trapped at the most primitive level of technology. Each day that passes without developing these skills leaves you further behind in the essential race for survival. Modern life has progressively dulled our senses. Constant background noise has diminished our hearing acuity. Climate-controlled environments have reduced our sensitivity to subtle temperature changes. Processed foods have blunted our taste discrimination. Artificial lighting has impaired our night vision. Deodorized environments have atrophied our sense of smell. In the Paleolithic, these senses weren't luxuries but essential survival tools. Hearing detected predators before they struck. Temperature sensitivity predicted weather changes. Taste identified potentially toxic foods. Night vision enabled navigation after sunset. Smell warned of predators, fire, rotting food, and coming rain. Your diminished sensory capabilities would leave you functionally impaired in the Stone Age environment. You would miss crucial environmental cues. You would fail to detect dangers until too late. You would struggle to find resources that Stone Age humans could locate easily. This sensory gap creates a perpetual disadvantage that compounds over time. Each missed cue, each overlooked resource, each undetected threat pushes you closer to the inevitable breaking point. Modern humans have a profoundly distorted sense of risk. We fear unlikely but dramatic threats, shark attacks, airplane crashes, while ignoring common but mundane dangers, poor diet, sedentary lifestyle. We overestimate risks that receive media attention and underestimate those that don't. We fear the novel more than the familiar, regardless of actual danger levels. This distorted risk perception would prove fatal in the Paleolithic. You might spend energy avoiding relatively minor threats while ignoring truly deadly ones. You might fear wolves and bears, but drink contaminated water without hesitation. You might avoid certain areas due to predator concerns, but willingly eat unfamiliar berries. Stone Age humans developed finely calibrated risk assessment through direct experience and cultural transmission. They knew which risks warranted immediate action and which could be managed with proper precautions. They understood which environmental signs indicated genuine danger and which were benign. Without this calibrated risk perception, you would constantly misallocate your limited energy and attention. You would exhaust yourself avoiding phantom threats while walking directly into real ones. This fundamental misjudgment of your environment virtually guarantees a fatal mistake. Modern life has trained you for constant partial attention, checking notifications, multitasking, rapidly shifting focus. We rarely practice sustained, undivided attention on a single task or environment. In the Paleolithic, this attentional style is maladaptive to the point of being fatal. Tracking game requires hours of sustained, focused observation. Gathering edible plants demands careful, methodical examination. Navigating unfamiliar territory necessitates continuous environmental awareness. Your attention would fragment under stress precisely when you most need it to be focused. You would miss subtle signs of predators. You would overlook available food sources. You would fail to register changes in weather until too late. This attention deficit, a product of modern information environments, would undermine even your best efforts at survival. The Paleolithic world demands a type of sustained, patient attention that modern humans rarely practice and quickly find exhausting. Modern humans in developed nations consume resources at an unprecedented rate. We expect abundant food, clean water, comfortable shelter, and protection from the elements as baseline conditions rather than achievements. We discard still useful items for newer versions and rarely repair what can be replaced. This consumption mindset becomes immediately unsustainable in the Paleolithic context. Resources that Stone Age humans carefully preserved, you instinctively waste. Materials they would have valued, you overlook. Tools they would have maintained and repaired, you discard when damaged. The psychological shift from consumer to conservator doesn't happen automatically. Your ingrained habits of consumption, taking more than you need, not preserving surplus, discarding rather than repairing, persist even as they threaten your survival. These habits aren't conscious choices, but deeply embedded patterns that require deliberate, sustained effort to change. The consequences of this mindset are dire. You exhaust nearby resources without planning for their renewal. You fail to preserve food during times of abundance. You consume materials that could be fashioned into essential tools. Each wasteful action brings you closer to a resource crisis that Stone Age humans would have anticipated and avoided. Modern life has disrupted the natural feedback loops that regulate human behavior. The connections between actions and consequences have become abstract, delayed, or entirely obscured. We rarely experience the direct environmental impacts of our consumption choices. In the Paleolithic, these feedback loops were immediate and concrete. Overhunting an area led directly to hunger. Contaminating a water source led directly to illness. Failing to prepare for winter led directly to suffering from cold. Your modern expectation of buffered consequences would prove maladaptive. You would struggle to connect your actions with their outcomes in the direct way necessary for survival. The lesson that wasting resources leads to deprivation might come too late when you're already starving, dehydrated, or freezing. This disrupted feedback system impairs learning in the Paleolithic context. Stone Age humans modified their behavior based on direct environmental feedback, creating effective adaptation. Your delayed recognition of these connections would make adaptation dangerously slow and inefficient. Modern life in developed nations has created an illusion of infinite resources. Supermarket shelves are perpetually stocked. Water flows from taps without apparent limit. Energy powers our devices without visible scarcity. This illusion collapses immediately in the Paleolithic, but the psychological expectation lingers. You would struggle to grasp the true scarcity of essential resources. You would assume that more food, water, or materials must be available somewhere nearby, if only you look harder. Stone Age humans never developed this illusion. They understood viscerally that resources were finite, seasonal, and required effort to obtain. They lived with constant awareness of potential scarcity and adapted their behavior accordingly. Your persistent expectation of abundance would lead to poor resource management. You would consume what should be rationed. You would fail to stockpile when opportunity presents. You would expend energy searching for non-existent alternatives, rather than carefully utilizing what's available. This fundamental misalignment with reality would undermine even your most determined survival efforts. Your immune system is a product of your environment. Throughout your life, it has been trained to recognize and respond to a specific set of pathogens, those common in the modern world. It has also been shaped by vaccinations, antibiotics, and other medical interventions that have eliminated or controlled many once common diseases. The Paleolithic world contained a dramatically different microbial landscape. Your immune system would encounter pathogens it has never been exposed to and lacks the programming to fight effectively. Simultaneously, it would waste energy mounting unnecessary responses to harmless microbes it incorrectly identifies as threats. This immunological mismatch creates vulnerability beyond what Stone Age humans experienced. Their immune systems, while lacking modern medical support, were at least adapted to their microbial environment through generations of exposure and natural selection. Yours would be essentially naive, fighting the wrong battles while unprepared for the real threats. The consequences would manifest quickly. Gastrointestinal illness from unfamiliar water sources. Respiratory infections from microbes your immune system has never encountered. Skin infections from minor wounds exposed to prehistoric bacteria. Each illness depletes your energy reserves and further compromises your already tenuous survival position. Modern humans rarely think about water safety. Municipal treatment systems eliminate pathogens. Building codes prevent cross-contamination. Bottled water provides portable, safe hydration. In the Paleolithic, water was simultaneously essential and dangerous. Every water source, streams, rivers, lakes, puddles, potentially harbored bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and parasites that could cause debilitating or fatal illness. Stone Age humans developed strategies for identifying safer water sources, and in some cases, rudimentary purification methods. They recognized that running water was generally safer than stagnant water, that water from certain sources caused illness, and that some plants had purifying properties when added to water. You lack this knowledge and the established immunity to common waterborne pathogens that Paleolithic humans developed through lifetime exposure. Your first drink from a seemingly clean stream might introduce Giardia, Cryptosporidium, E. coli, or other pathogens that cause severe diarrhea and vomiting, rapidly leading to dehydration and electrolyte imbalances that, without treatment, quickly become fatal. The cruel irony? Death from waterborne illness often comes through dehydration. Dying of thirst despite consuming water, as your body expels fluid faster than you can replace it. Modern humans rarely come into direct contact with soil microbes. We walk on paved surfaces, wear shoes, wash our hands after gardening, and generally maintain separation from the microbial world beneath our feet. In the Paleolithic, this separation didn't exist. Direct soil contact was constant. Sleeping on the ground, digging for roots, crafting with clay, treating wounds with soil-exposed plants. The soil microbiome entered the human body through countless pathways daily. Some soil microbes are beneficial, even essential for proper immune function. Others cause serious diseases. Stone Age humans developed partial immunity to common soil pathogens through continuous exposure. Your body, lacking this adaptation, would be vulnerable to infections that rarely affect modern populations. Tetanus spores, present in soil worldwide, would enter through even minor cuts, potentially leading to the agonizing muscle spasms and respiratory failure characteristic of the disease. Parasitic helminth eggs, abundant in soils contaminated by animal feces, would introduce intestinal worms that deplete nutrients and cause chronic illness. Fungal spores would create persistent skin infections that worsen with the sweat and dirt of Paleolithic life. Each of these invisible threats waits silently in the environment, requiring no special circumstance to find its way into your vulnerable modern body. Modern humans in developed nations have largely forgotten what it means to live with parasites. Regular bathing, sanitation systems, food safety protocols, and anti-parasitic medications have eliminated or controlled most parasitic infections. In the Paleolithic, parasites were universal companions. External parasites, lice, fleas, ticks, mites, infested hair, clothing, and sleeping areas. Internal parasites, roundworms, tapeworms, flukes, inhabited the digestive tract and other organs. These weren't occasional infections, but constant, lifelong residents of the human body. Stone Age humans adapted both biologically and behaviorally to this parasitic load. Their immune systems regulated responses to prevent excessive inflammation. Their social practices included grooming to remove external parasites. Their dietary preferences sometimes included plants with anti-parasitic properties. Your body lacks these adaptations. Your immune system might mount excessive inflammatory responses to parasitic infections, causing more damage than the parasites themselves. Your psychological aversion to parasites might lead to harmful stress responses or self-damaging removal attempts. Your digestive system, unaccustomed to sharing nutrients, would suffer more severe consequences from intestinal parasites. The compounding effects of multiple parasitic infections would steadily erode your health. Anemia from blood-feeding parasites. Malnutrition from intestinal worms. Secondary infections from parasite-induced skin lesions. Tick-borne diseases like relapsing fever or ancient forms of ehrlichiosis. The cumulative burden would diminish your strength and cognitive function precisely when you need them most. Modern humans have significantly controlled disease-carrying insect vectors through environmental management, chemical control, screening, protective clothing, and medical interventions. In the Paleolithic, these vectors operated without restriction. Mosquitoes, ticks, fleas, lice, and biting flies transmitted diseases that caused enormous morbidity and mortality. With no repellents, no screen shelters, no protective clothing, and no medical treatment, exposure was universal and inevitable. Stone Age humans developed partial immunity to local vector-borne diseases through childhood exposure and genetic adaptation over generations. Those who survived to adulthood had immune systems trained to manage these infections without catastrophic outcomes. Your body has none of these adaptations. Diseases that Paleolithic humans weathered as childhood illnesses might affect you as life-threatening infections. Malaria, transmitted by mosquitoes, has existed in human populations for over 100,000 years. Various forms of relapsing fever, transmitted by ticks and lice, have ancient origins. Trypanosomiasis, leishmaniasis, bartonellosis. The list of vector-borne diseases with prehistoric roots is extensive. Each bite from an infected vector introduces pathogens your immune system is unprepared to fight. Without medical intervention, these infections follow their natural course, often cycles of fever, pain, and progressive debilitation that render survival activities impossible. Modern public health systems monitor and control zoonotic diseases, those that jump from animals to humans. Vaccination programs, surveillance systems, culling of infected animals, and treatment protocols have reduced the impact of these cross-species infections. In the Paleolithic, these barriers didn't exist. Close contact with wild animals through hunting, processing carcasses, and sharing habitats created constant opportunities for zoonotic transmission. Many of our most serious human pathogens originated as animal diseases that made the species jump during our evolutionary history. Stone Age humans were both victims of and selectors for these zoonotic adaptations. Those with genetic resistance to common zoonotic pathogens survived to reproduce, gradually shaping human immune responses to these threats. Your body lacks the benefits of this evolutionary history. Zoonotic pathogens that circulated in Paleolithic animal populations, some familiar, many now extinct, would encounter your naive immune system with potentially catastrophic results. The risk would be highest during food acquisition. Skinning and butchering game without protective equipment creates direct blood and tissue contact. Consumption of undercooked meat introduces whatever pathogens the animal harbored. Even gathering plants puts you at risk through contact with animal urine, feces, and saliva on vegetation. Each of these exposures is a microbial lottery, one you're biologically unprepared to win. Modern humans have outsourced weather prediction to technology. Meteorological services, weather apps, and climate-controlled environments have eliminated the need for personal weather reading skills. In the Paleolithic, weather reading was an essential survival skill. Stone Age humans could interpret cloud formations, wind patterns, animal behavior, plant responses, and subtle atmospheric changes to predict weather developments hours or days in advance. This knowledge allowed them to seek shelter before storms, prepare for temperature changes, and position themselves advantageously for hunting or gathering. Your inability to read these signs would leave you perpetually weather blind. Storms would catch you unprepared and exposed. Cold fronts would arrive without warning. Seasonal transitions would surprise you repeatedly. Each weather event you fail to anticipate becomes a potential survival crisis. The psychological impact of this weather vulnerability would be significant. Modern humans expect weather predictability and environmental stability. The constant uncertainty of what environmental conditions might arise next creates chronic stress that further depletes your limited cognitive and emotional resources. Modern humans rarely experience true exposure to the elements. Our clothing is designed with advanced materials that manage moisture, trap heat, block wind, and repel water. Our buildings create microclimates of perfect comfort, regardless of external conditions. In the Paleolithic, these buffers didn't exist. Clothing made from animal hides, plant fibers, or bark provided limited protection. Shelters reduced, but didn't eliminate environmental exposure. Stone Age humans lived in direct relationship with environmental conditions, their bodies continuously adapting to temperature fluctuations, humidity changes, and weather events. Your body, accustomed to environmental stability, would struggle with this constant exposure. Sweating mechanisms adapted to air-conditioned environments function poorly in sustained heat. Circulation patterns optimized for sedentary warmth fail in prolonged cold. Skin conditioned to protection blisters, cracks, and burns when exposed to environmental extremes. The consequences cascade quickly. Sunburn leads to fever and increased water needs. Wind exposure accelerates heat loss and dehydration. Rain creates hypothermia risk and destroys improvised shelters. Each environmental challenge depletes your energy reserves and increases the likelihood of fatal misjudgments. The climate 15,000 years ago differed significantly from today's. The world was emerging from the last glacial maximum, with different atmospheric composition, temperature patterns, precipitation levels, and seasonal variations. These differences would make even your basic environmental expectations invalid. Stone Age humans had no concept of normal climate. They lived entirely within their experienced reality, adapting to conditions as they existed. Their bodies and behaviors were optimized for their specific environmental context through generations of adaptation. Your body and expectations, formed in the modern climate, would be misaligned with Paleolithic reality. Temperature ranges might exceed your anticipated extremes. Seasonal patterns might differ from your predictions. Rainfall distribution might contradict your assumptions. Each of these misalignments creates survival disadvantages that compound over time. The most dangerous aspect of this climate displacement is that you wouldn't merely be experiencing unfamiliar weather. You would be fundamentally misreading the environment based on climate patterns that don't yet exist. Your predictive models, conscious and unconscious, would generate consistently inaccurate forecasts, undermining even your most careful survival planning. Modern humans navigate primarily through external tools: maps, GPS, street signs, landmarks of human construction. We rarely develop the deep landscape literacy that was universal among Stone Age humans. In the Paleolithic, this literacy was essential for survival. Hunter-gatherers maintained detailed mental maps covering hundreds of square miles. They navigated by subtle landscape features, celestial positioning, vegetation patterns, animal signs, and sensory cues that modern humans typically overlook. Your inability to read and remember landscapes would make efficient movement impossible. You would waste precious energy traveling in circles, miss crucial resources that lie just beyond your perception, and struggle to relocate successful hunting or gathering sites. This navigational blindness forces you to remain in depleted areas rather than moving strategically across the landscape as Stone Age humans did. The psychological toll of spatial disorientation is severe. Humans have a fundamental need for spatial anchoring, knowing where we are in relation to safety, resources, and dangers. Persistent disorientation creates anxiety that impairs decision-making, precisely when clear thinking is most essential. Modern humans move through highly modified landscapes designed for ease of traversal. Flat roads, bridges, cleared paths, and graded slopes have eliminated most natural movement barriers. Even wilderness trails are selected and maintained for relatively easy passage. The Paleolithic landscape presented constant physical challenges. Dense undergrowth, fallen trees, steep slopes, rock fields, marshes, and rivers without crossings made every journey an expenditure of significant energy. Stone Age humans adapted to these challenges through lifetime experience, developing specific movement techniques, remarkable endurance, and efficient pathways memorized and refined over generations. Your body, accustomed to easy movement on prepared surfaces, would struggle with this challenging terrain. Ankles accustomed to flat surfaces sprain on uneven ground. Knees habituated to consistent support strain on steep slopes. Muscles adapted to regular, moderate exertion fail during the intense bursts required to overcome natural barriers. The energy cost of movement increases dramatically in this environment. A journey that Stone Age humans might complete efficiently could exhaust you completely, leaving you vulnerable to other threats and unable to perform essential survival tasks upon arrival. This movement inefficiency creates a steadily worsening position as resources near your location are depleted and more distant procurement becomes necessary. Modern humans have largely tamed water. Bridges span rivers, boats traverse lakes, pipes channel flow, and barriers control flooding. We rarely confront water as a serious movement barrier or survival threat. In the Paleolithic, water features presented major challenges and dangers. Rivers without bridges required hazardous fording or swimming. Lakes without boats necessitated lengthy detours. Seasonal flooding transformed familiar landscapes into impassable barriers. Flash floods turned dry stream beds into deadly torrents without warning. Stone Age humans developed specific skills for water navigation, reading currents, identifying safe crossing points, predicting flooding patterns, and in some cases, constructing crude rafts or boats. They understood intimately which water features could be traversed safely and which required respect and avoidance. Your lack of these skills would make water features disproportionately dangerous. Attempting to cross a seemingly placid river, you might be caught in an underwater current. Drinking from a temporary rainwater pool, you might ingest pathogens that cause debilitating illness. Camping in a dry stream bed during pleasant weather, you might be swept away by a flash flood triggered by rainfall miles away. Each water feature you encounter presents a binary choice: risk crossing or accept detour, with potentially fatal consequences if you choose wrongly. Modern humans take for granted the concept of safe space, environments where external threats are minimized or eliminated. Our homes, workplaces, and public buildings are designed to create this safety through physical barriers, environmental controls, and security measures. In the Paleolithic, true safety didn't exist. Every location carried inherent risks: predators, insects, weather exposure, falling objects, poisonous plants, unseen holes or cliffs. Stone Age humans never experienced the complete threat relaxation that modern humans consider normal. Their vigilance was continuous, their threat assessment ongoing, their behavior constantly modulated to address environmental dangers. Your expectation of safe space would create dangerous blind spots in the Paleolithic context. You would instinctively relax vigilance in environments that feel secure, missing crucial threat indicators. You would engage in behaviors appropriate only for truly safe environments. Deep sleep, focused attention on single tasks, reduced environmental awareness in contexts where such behaviors invite disaster. This misalignment between expected and actual safety creates a persistent vulnerability that increases the likelihood of fatal errors. The mental exhaustion of continuous vigilance, for which your psychology is unprepared, further compounds the danger by degrading decision-making and attention precisely when they're most needed. Modern humans live with an implicit assumption that help is available in emergencies. We know that injury, illness, or environmental threats can be addressed through emergency services, medical facilities, or at minimum, the assistance of others who will respond to calls for help. In the Paleolithic, this safety net didn't exist. Injury often meant death, particularly for individuals separated from their band. Illness ran its course without intervention. Environmental threats had to be addressed with only the resources immediately available. Stone Age humans operated with the constant awareness that survival depended entirely on their own capabilities and those of their immediate group. Your subconscious expectation of potential rescue would influence risk assessment and behavior in ways that increase danger. You might take chances that Stone Age humans would avoid, assuming that negative outcomes can be mitigated through assistance that doesn't exist. You might expend energy on signals for help rather than direct survival activities. You might postpone difficult but necessary actions in the irrational hope that rescue will arrive. As realization of your complete abandonment sets in, psychological consequences follow. The security of knowing that help is theoretically available forms an unrecognized pillar of modern mental health. Its complete absence creates existential dread that further undermines the psychological resilience necessary for survival. Perhaps the most profound safety difference between modern and Paleolithic life lies in the consequence threshold for errors. In the modern world, most mistakes are survivable. Wrong turns are corrected, poor decisions are mitigated, dangerous choices rarely lead to immediate death. In the Stone Age, the margin for error was vastly smaller. A single misjudgment, drinking from the wrong water source, eating the wrong plant, approaching a seemingly dead animal that isn't quite dead, sleeping in the wrong location, could prove rapidly fatal. Stone Age humans navigated this high-consequence environment through knowledge accumulated over generations and distributed across the social group. Your modern decision-making frameworks are adapted to environments where errors rarely have immediate, irreversible consequences. You're accustomed to second chances, to learning through trial and error, to systems designed with redundancies that prevent single failures from becoming catastrophic. The Paleolithic world offers no such forgiveness. Each decision carries weight that modern humans rarely experience. The psychological burden of this responsibility, knowing that any choice might be your last, creates decision paralysis or impulsivity, both of which further increase the likelihood of fatal errors. The final, bitter truth emerges. It isn't any single aspect of Stone Age life that would kill you. It's the comprehensive mismatch between everything you are, physically, psychologically, socially, and culturally, and everything the Paleolithic world demands. As the sun sets on your first day in the Paleolithic world, you've survived. barely. You're dehydrated, hungry, exposed to the elements, and overwhelmed by the sensory and psychological assault of an environment utterly alien, despite being your species' native habitat for most of its existence. The darkness brings new terrors, sounds you can't identify, eyes that reflect the last light before vanishing into shadow, the absolute darkness of a world without artificial illumination. The bone-deep cold that seeps up from the ground as the heat of day dissipates. If you've managed to create some form of shelter, it's inadequate. If you've found water, it may be making you ill even now. If you've located anything resembling food, it was barely enough to stave off the worst hunger pangs. Your modern body, with its high caloric needs and limited physical capabilities, is already beginning to fail you. But beyond these immediate physical challenges lies a deeper, more profound realization. One that reaches across 15,000 years to offer perhaps the most important lesson we can learn from our Stone Age ancestors. The success of Paleolithic humans wasn't a triumph of individual prowess. It wasn't superior physical strength, exceptional intelligence, or extraordinary courage that allowed them to thrive in environments that would kill you within days. It was something much more powerful, the accumulated knowledge of generations, shared across tightly bonded social groups, refined through direct experience, and transmitted through cultural systems of unprecedented effectiveness. No single Stone Age human possessed all the knowledge necessary for survival. They lived as parts of a whole, each individual contributing to and drawing from a collective wisdom that no one person could encompass alone. Their true evolutionary advantage wasn't opposable thumbs or large brains. It was their social structures and information-sharing systems. The modern human, despite technological advantages unimaginable to our ancestors, has lost this collective wisdom about the natural world. We've traded it for specialized knowledge of our own creation, how to code computers, engineer bridges, perform surgery, compose music. These skills, while remarkable, leave us helpless when facing the environment that shaped our species. This thought experiment reveals not the superiority of modern humans over our primitive ancestors, but precisely the opposite. It exposes the extraordinary sophistication and effectiveness of Stone Age lifeways that permitted humans to survive and thrive in environments we can barely comprehend from our removed, artificial perspective. The ultimate humility is recognizing that despite all our technological progress, we've lost fundamental connections to the natural world, to our own bodies, and to the collective wisdom that sustained our species for millennia. Our ancestors weren't simply surviving in the Stone Age. They were living in profound relationship with their environment, a relationship we've sacrificed for comforts and capabilities they couldn't imagine. As you lie shivering in the absolute darkness of your first and possibly last night in the Paleolithic, this understanding offers little practical comfort, but it stands as testimony to the remarkable humans who came before us. Those who didn't simply survive the Stone Age, but mastered it through collective wisdom, social cooperation, and deep environmental connection that modern humans can barely comprehend. You wouldn't last a day in the Stone Age, but that says less about the harshness of the past than it does about what we've lost in our journey to the present.